Good evening. I'm Michael Loomis, hanging out here with you in the Chew Digest virtual studio on YouTube.com. All right. How's everybody out there doing on this Wednesday, March the 11th, 2026? I, uh, I'm really enjoying this whole spring break thing in the middle of school, which today I had one of those moments where I'm sitting there thinking, is all this school that I'm going to get my bachelor's degree and then my master's degree, is it really actually going to be worth it all? Am I going to be able to do anything with it other than not have to worry about somebody with a master's degree from university saying, well, I'm smarter than you because I have a bachelor's or a master's degree in this subject. I don't know. I enjoy the educational process. I'm an autodidact. I'm a self learner. So, in reality, the university experience I'm having is more of one that is about the experience. I mean, I love to learn. I can learn on my own just fine. And, so really, what is the value of getting a master's degree in applied nutrition and health or medical nutrition? Really, it's just to get past certain hurdles that might prevent me from getting certain kinds of jobs if I do need to go into that arena where I need to become an employee, which I may again at some point in time, just because, you know, I don't know. I would much rather work independently in the entrepreneurial space for sure. In a place where I'm helping people better understand how the human body works. Uh, as a consultant, if you will, and be that person that can be there to help somebody, or a lot of people make the transition from where they're at to where they want to be. Um, and I know a lot of jobs like that. By the way, this is part two of um, Curiosity Time and, oh my goodness, where is it? Entertain me with humor. Curiosity Time and the Future, part two. Part one of this is from last night, and I'm just kind of continuing on with my prior thoughts on the future and technology. Um, and I want to be able to help people at the same time, but also I'm trying to work through my own issues related to the rate at which technology is changing, and what affects the use of, moving beyond a post-industrial age into a world that is defined more so by robotics and literally the cost of everything dropping through the floor because of technology. Um, the use of what we call artificial intelligence, which for most people they're calling things like Chat GPT, Gemini, Grok, AI, when it's really not. It's an advanced search engine, if you will. It's an advanced form of, I guess you could even almost say it's it's to English and it's to language and literature what the scientific and graphing calculator has been to math. And even now, though, things like ChatGPT 5.4, I believe it is beginning to solve problems in math that were otherwise thought unsolvable, which is really kind of mind blowing. But it's understandable because that should be the case. I mean, that's the whole point of us moving forward and creating tools. I mean, we're doing this to help ourselves. We're not doing it to shoot ourselves in the foot. And the reality is, and I'm going to be reading a little bit more from an outline here today because I listened to a lecture today from a video series on YouTube called Moonshots, which if you are not familiar with it, I highly recommend it. I think they even have a website called moonshots.com. If so, I'll put it down in the notes section. But we are at an inflection point in time where things are going to start looking a whole lot different. And from my perspective, and my friend Philip and a few other people, we're already seeing it now. It's just most people are not aware of it. And really the only thing that's kind of holding us back at this point is, just the fact that I think there's a lot of powers that be in this world that realize that there's going to be a lot of upheaval and upset by people that are unaware of what it is that is changing. People like me, not so much. I would say let's just get on with it, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get this thing done ASAP. It's going to make the world a whole lot easier, and it's going to eliminate a lot of the problems that result from having a monetary system based on fiat currencies. The reality is that, we live in a world now where having access to, millions upon millions of dollars worth of music libraries. Now we can get them as a student for $5 a month, a subscription fee. And so that being said, what we're probably going to be looking at, because for whatever reason, we seem to not be able to get over this idea that we need to have some kind of monetary exchange numbers in place, which again, to me, is just kind of pointless because it's just a matter of wasting time shuffling ones and zeros on pieces of paper. And the reality is we have people like Elon Musk who are quickly approaching having a value on paper of $1 trillion. There ain't no human on the world that can spend $1 trillion in a lifetime, period. And yet, we're seeing an acceleration of that with, just a handful of people, but that really should demonstrate to you just how meaningless this is. I mean, I understand how interest works. I understand how if you know something that other people don't and you know how to implement some kind of software, yeah, you're going to make a certain amount more money than the guy that works at McDonald's that doesn't have that knowledge. But eventually the technology is going to come around, and now has, that also eliminates your job or makes it worth no more than just a McDonald's employee. And that's kind of a bummer, I know, for people that have gotten used to being a programmer making a whole lot of money. But now the reality is most of what somebody that was making six figures, or up into the multi six figure, 100 to $200,000 a year, because they knew what order to put letters and numbers and characters in lines in a computer by doing this throughout the day. Those jobs are gone. And the only real consequential jobs that are left anymore are hard construction jobs. But even those, a lot of those are going to be going away pretty darn quickly, as we see things happening that are much more modular. I mean, that's been happening with construction for a lot of years, to where everything used to be craft, manual labor, pipe bending, threading, welding, and stuff like that, to the point where they've made everything modular and you can just plug everything in real quick, which means less labor paid for the same end product to be implemented. And this water brought to you by Trader Joe's. Come on. There we go. Yeah, Trader Joe's. Good water. But this is just the future that we are living in today. And there are a lot of people that are just oblivious to this. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I do wonder, even with my own choice of educational endeavors, which I thought I was making the right choices, of getting getting an education that's not going to be eliminated post haste, by artificial intelligence or I'll just call it technology. I'm getting really tired of the term AI. It's kind of a useless term at this point, because it's not artificial and it's not really intelligent. Um, but it is technology nonetheless. And it has, through its programming and its ability to follow our prompting and commands, it can go out and work as an extension of us, where, like, for example, before I would have to go out into large databases, I would have to go down to Long Beach City College, go into the library, go onto their computer, or even, say, 30 years ago, I would have had to go to a librarian, and a librarian would have had to help me, uh, by pointing me in the right direction, or helping me look in the right categories for books that might be able to help me support the ideas that I'm looking for in a paper that I'm writing about any certain topic, whatever it might be. Now I can ask ChatGPT to go out and do it for me, and it will find exactly what I'm looking for. It will provide me with a scientific, or with a APA formatted citation to the actual paper or the literary source where it can be found, and it'll do it in seconds. And just think about the cost of time and the money and all that went into that search, versus the amount of time and hours it would have taken me to do that just 30 years ago. And that's what's going to happen with everything as we move forward into the future. I mean, if we had to use numbers and we have to make it in a way that there is some kind of monetary accounting that is taking place and being transferred from one person to another, which, quite frankly, the way I see it, is still using broken systems from the industrial age to account. Again, pointless. I mean, to what end? To what end? I mean, it's just, it makes no sense. But I mean, let me just put it in really simple terms. The idea basically is that in the same way that $10 million worth of music library back in 1997 that I would have had to pay for to have access to all that music now in my bedroom, I now have on my phone for $5.95 a month as a student. And it's called Spotify, Apple Music, $5.95 a month versus $10 million. So what happened? Did it get that cheap? Mm, or was it that all that music was that much more inflated back then? Two sides of the same coin, my friends. And so imagine a world we live in now where it would take a job working and getting paid anywhere between $125 to $150,000 a year to live, food, shelter, clothing, upkeep, insurance, all those things. Now imagine that all of that could be had for for a total of $250 a month in subscription fees. That's the future we're going to be living in. And so that's the way to understand it. Will it look exactly like that? I guess if we need to have some kind of accounting in place, then yeah, that's probably what it's going to look like. But why we even need to waste time and effort on accounting all that stuff is kind of beyond me. I I do think that I don't think very well about this because some of these things are so far off in the future. I think I'm still 28 questions away from being able to ask the right question, um, or 28 layered questions away from the right question to get that right answer. And so that's kind of what I do like right now, when I'm taking like this spring break, or I have the Christmas break, or I have the summer break between my classes. I spend a lot of time right up here kind of contemplating all these things that are going on and what they look like. Uh, but currently, we are living in an age of acceleration, and it is a tremendous age. And so, from here on out, for the rest of this broadcast here on YouTube, I'm going to be reading from a script. And so you'll see my eyes going up and down like this. Okay? Capiche? We appear to be living at the beginning of a profound turning point in human history. For centuries, technological change arrived in waves that stretched across generations. The steam engine, electricity, automobiles, aviation, and the internet all reshaped civilization. But each transformation unfolded slowly enough that societies had time to adjust. Institutions evolved gradually, education adapted over decades, and economic systems bent but did not break under the pressure of change. Today, that rhythm is collapsing. A new convergence of technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, advanced computing, synthetic data, biotechnology, and global digital networks is compressing the timeline of innovation. Discoveries once required decades of research now emerge in months. Tools that once required elite institutions are now accessible to individuals with modest hardware and open source software. The pace of transformation is accelerating to such a degree that it increasingly feels like progress and more like escape velocity. Artificial intelligence sits at the center of this transformation, knocking at the door. What began as systems that could recognize patterns or generate text has rapidly evolved into something far more consequential. Modern AI models can reason across disciplines, generate software, synthesize knowledge, assist scientific research, what I was telling you about earlier, and increasingly participate in the design of their own successors. In other words, intelligence itself is becoming a tool for building more intelligence. Good thing, bad thing here. This creates a feedback loop. The systems humans build today help design the systems that will exist tomorrow. Each generation of technology improves the next. The result is a recursive acceleration that shortens the time between breakthroughs and multiplies their impact. The implications reach far beyond software, things that would have been written about by Ray Bradbury. Biology, for example, is increasingly treated as a form of programmable information. Cells can be simulated, genomes can be edited, and disease can be modeled computationally before treatments are tested physically. Scientifically, scientific discovery itself is beginning to resemble a computational process where vast data sets from physical chemistry and biology are analyzed by machine learning systems, searching for patterns invisible to the human mind. And at this point, I would actually suggest that you could look at it this way or the other way, in that we have taken the human mind and we have turned it into a computational model that can work much faster than ours. And so it's not that we are making computer models that, yeah, I guess we are. Anyways, um, we are going to be able to determine a lot of things like disease processes and ultimately what is it that is landing us in a world of hurt. And even this idea of mine of wanting to live to be 120 years of age, guess what? Software titles like these are going to be the thing that helps me get to that point, that helps me narrow down and push out some of that extraneous noise that you're going to get from people that are influencers and stuff like that. It's going to do this, and it's going to help be able to narrow the field of capacity to answer these questions, so much so that we don't need to give these things access to the whole world's database of knowledge. What we're going to end up having is a couple of flat files that answer some very basic parameters, which then, if they need to, they can open up temporarily and go out and get that next piece of information and bring it back. And so we're all going to have the ability at some point to have our own little individual data center that is connected to our own network here at home. that doesn't take too much computational power, and there will be layers of it all the way up into the cloud where it will be ultimately run by things like NVIDIA's um, uh, what do you call them? The GPUs. And so we personally are not going to need to have the the expensive data centers. We're going to have iterations of that get smaller and smaller until they get to a point where it's in our little Mac Mini, and then it's also on our phones, and it'll just be able to scale up to, if the phone can't answer it, it'll go to the Mac Mini. If the Mac Mini can't answer it, it'll work its way up into the cloud, and that way it'll also be much more distributed. I would even like to think that at some point in time we would have the option to take all of our computers that are in our homes with all of the memory and all of the processing power and make them available in a backwards sense, so that the whole world's computers could be networked together to think as one hive mind. Because if we could do that, I'm pretty certain we could answer a lot of these questions a whole lot quicker. And the nice part about computers is they're not going to be nationalistic in any way. They're not going to be xenophobic. They're not going to have any religious or political ideologies and need for identity that we humans have. So there is that. Anyways, organizations are changing as well. For much of modern history, institutions functioned through layers of management, meetings, documents, and human oversight. Now, those structures can be analyzed, optimized, and in some cases, partially automated by artificial intelligence. Entire companies can be mapped through their internal data, allowing machines to track progress, identify inefficiencies, and assist decision making at a scale no individual could manage. In this emerging environment, the boundary between the digital and the physical worlds grows increasingly thin. Software begins to influence everything from manufacturing to transportation to medicine. Robotics promises to extend the reach of artificial intelligence beyond information work into the material world. Energy systems, transportation networks, and data infrastructure become the new industrial backbone of a computational civilization. Even culture is shifting in response. For decades, popular narratives about advanced technologies have leaned heavily towards dystopia. You know what I'm talking about? Terminator, uh, Mad Max, things like that, where we see machines taking over the Matrix. And for whatever reason, these stories about artificial intelligence, they often feature in movies with machines that threaten human survival, undermine social order, or strip humanity of meaning altogether. And it's not surprising that we see that because, well, people are willing to pay to watch that stuff because it feeds something in their mind. Yet there's also the other end of that spectrum, which is Star Trek world. So you either have Terminator on one hand or you have Star Trek on the other. Well, the reality is it's probably going to be something more like Star Trek. I mean, again, why would robots and the technology that powers their computational processes have any interest in trying to supersede mankind. It would serve no purpose whatsoever. Um, and so, as I was saying, for decades, popular narratives about advanced technology have leaned heavily towards dystopia. Stories about artificial intelligence often feature machines that threaten human survival, undermine social order, or strip humanity of meaning. Yet narratives shape expectations, and expectations shape innovation. If the only imagined future is catastrophic, the technologies built to avoid catastrophe may inadvertently reinforce fear. An alternative vision imagines a world where technology amplifies human potential rather than replacing it. In this view, artificial intelligence becomes a partner in scientific discovery, medicine becomes increasingly precise and preventative, energy becomes abundant, and global access to knowledge expands dramatically. These possibilities do not emerge automatically, but they become easier to pursue when societies allow themselves to imagine constructive futures. Yet the transition towards such a future is unlikely to be smooth. It's going to be a curvy and bumpy road. Work, for instance, is entering a period of uncertainty. Historically, automation has replaced certain tasks while creating new industries and new forms of employment. However, artificial intelligence threatens to automate many cognitive tasks that are previously considered uniquely human. Writing, coding, analysis, research, and planning, once the core of professional work, are increasingly assisted or partially performed by machines. This does not necessarily imply the disappearance of human work, but it suggests a reorganization of economic roles. Some individuals will shift toward creative, strategic, or entrepreneurial work that leverages AI tools. Others may face displacement during the transition. Entire professions may transform faster than educational systems or social institutions can adapt. Thank you, Trader Joe. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier in this video. Is that I'm at the point right now where I see that happening, and it makes me even second guess the process of advanced education at this point in time, much less the endurance of it. And it really kind of boggles my mind to see colleges expanding and tearing down older buildings and building newer buildings and building bigger buildings, and it's like, oh, are they even going to be necessary anymore moving forward? Um anyhow, at the same time, the barriers to innovation are falling. A generation ago, launching a technological venture required enormous capital, specialized knowledge, and access to rare computing resources. Today, individuals can build sophisticated systems using publicly available models, open source frameworks, and relatively inexpensive hardware. Innovation is becoming less restricted by geography, institutional affiliation, or financial backing. This dynamic produces both opportunity and instability. On one hand, a new generation of creators, engineers, and entrepreneurs can enter fields that were previously inaccessible. On the other hand, the speed of change increases competition and reduces the security of established roles. Adaptability becomes more important than credentials. Curiosity becomes more valuable than routine expertise. Underlying all of this is a deeper shift in the nature of scarcity. Industrial economies were defined by limitations in physical production. Resources, materials, manufacturing capacity, and labor were the central constraints on growth. In the emerging technological economy, those constraints begin to change. Information, design, and complexity become easier to produce, while new bottlenecks emerge around energy, computation, and infrastructure. Compute power, energy generation, semiconductor manufacturing, and data centers may become the defining resource of the new era. The ability to build and operate these systems could shape the balance of power in ways similar to oil fields and factories in the 20th century. As intelligence becomes embedded in machines, civilization itself may begin to resemble a computational system. Networks of humans and machines collaborate, adapt, and learn from each other. Scientific discovery accelerates, engineering cycles shorten, and global communication collapses distances that once seemed vast. The result is a world that feels simultaneously exhilarating and disorienting. Humanity has entered a moment when the future is no longer something distant that unfolds gradually across generations. It is something actively constructed in real time by individuals and organizations experimenting with powerful new tools. The pace of change will likely produce disruption, confusion, and disagreement, but it also opens possibilities that previous generations could scarcely imagine. The defining question of the coming decades is not whether technological process will continue, it is whether human wisdom, imagination, and cooperation will grow quickly enough to guide that progress towards outcomes that benefit civilization as a whole. That was a lot of words. Um, and I hope that makes sense. I hope that any of you watching will be able to appreciate and understand exactly where we're at. We are at a time where the waters are beginning to boil, and I hate to say it, but I really do think that there are a lot of people out there that just have no idea any of this is going on because they're still at work at their old jobs, working 2 or 3 jobs, and they're in a rat race that is still artificially being bolstered by unnecessary things because people don't know how to use the technology yet, even though the technology is available. So I really don't think we're too far away. I think Ray Kurzweil, going back decades, said 2028 to 2030, somewhere in there, is going to be the what he called the singularity. But the reality is, I think the singularity is a transition, a spectrum of steps, kind of like a set of stairs. And the singularity is not just one step, but it is a whole staircase. And we are currently on that singularity staircase. And we're just going up from here. And we're going to see a lot of management and things that require human input going away. And there will be judgment calls that'll be made. There will be a whole lot more people out there that are acting in the role of um, judges and or um, advocates, if you will, AI advocates. And I don't know. I really don't know. And it's really a hard place to be in, especially when, and I know I'm 53 years of age. I'm not quite near enough to retirement, but not far enough away to say it's not coming pretty quickly. Especially when I consider that I've been back in school full time for the last 3 years, and that time has seemed to have passed pretty darn quickly. So, I don't know. What I do know though is that there are a few things that are important to us that we need to take care of. We need to make sure we have adequate sleep. We need to make sure we're using all of our skeletal muscles, those ones that we have control over. We need to make sure we're getting enough exercise, eat the right foods, um, and just be grateful. Say thank you. Say thank you a whole lot more. Tell people you appreciate them, but mean it. And, if somebody wants to do something for you, let them and thank them and be thankful for it. Because living in a world of gratitude is becoming exceedingly more important as we move forward. Anyways, that's enough for tonight. I'm going to be going to bed here pretty soon. And I will be back with you tomorrow for more chewy bits on Chew Digest. You can find out more about some of my thoughts over the years at chewdigest.com. Some of that information I leave up there just as a reminder of where I've come from, because a lot of that stuff over in that left column when you go there, I don't necessarily believe that stuff anymore, and eventually I'm going to have to change it. But in the meantime, it's still kind of fun to go back and look at that, because even I'm going back through now and looking at stuff from just 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and saying, wow, I believed that, and now I don't. Or it has continued to change. And I imagine 5 years from now, I'll look back at my website, which will be a good 13 years old by that point, and I'll say, wow, I believed that back in 2026. Haha. Anyways, in the meantime, I am checking out for the evening. Good night. Farewell. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye-bye.